Okay. We were all watching her, but she didn't know. Okay. Yeah, I can. It's kind of bright. It's kind of bright. Okay. Well, folks, good afternoon, everyone. God, are we a little bit hot? Who's running sound? This is just a little hot. I'll sit back here. God, it even echoes from here. That's whoever's doing sound needs to get the control down. Pardon me? Do I control the volume for the room? No, that's really loud. Okay, let's call this meeting of the Moorhead Public Service Commission to order. I'd entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved. Second.
Got a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion is passed. I'd take a motion to approve the consent agenda with one change that I know of. We're going to remove item number 4. Anyone else need anything? We'll remove item number 4. With that, I'd entertain a motion to approve.
Make motion to approve agenda.
Consent agenda.
With number 4.
Okay.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion is approved. Item number 4 is an item to approve the minutes of the August 27th, 2019 meeting. And one of our liaisons has requested that we discuss item number 4. Deb, you're on.
I could not find them.
You couldn't find them?
Thank you.
Oh, okay.
So as I mentioned, David, it was actually a very simple question.
Yeah.
I couldn't find the minutes. And I noticed that last month, and so it's not in the packet. And so I wondered, you can't approve minutes that you haven't read. So I don't know if anybody else read them or had access to them, but I couldn't find them anywhere on the web page or in the material that was sent.
I had them in my packet, but that doesn't mean, I would imagine we're all getting the same.
Same here. We will check on that because
Okay.
they should be in the packet. They should be online. So we'll double check.
But
that.
they were
Right.
missing.
Yeah, I looked everywhere. So
Well, we
classic
didn't want you to read
newbie
'em.
question. So
We
that
didn't
was
want you
all it
to read 'em.
was. Is I didn't know if anybody else couldn't find them.
Yeah. Yeah, well, as soon as you drew my attention to them, I thought, okay, what's missing or wrong? So I went right to them,
Yep.
and they were right here. So we'll get you caught up. Yeah.
Dave,
Yes, I'm sorry, Heidi.
I know former Councilmember Gertz used to have some issues with not getting the full packet too, so I have heard that happen in the past where.
Aren't we all on the same listserv or email group that when this goes out?
I don't know that answer for sure, so I'll check on it.
I'd sure be a lot more comfortable if we were.
If everything is the same. Yep.
Yeah.
All right. Let me check.
Yeah.
Let me do some checking.
Yeah, because we should all be in the same group so that we're all getting the same exact packet from meeting to meeting. So let's check on that so that we can assure everyone that we're all seeing the same material. Okay. Anything further? I'd entertain a motion to approve the minutes from August 27th.
So moved.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Minutes are approved. Item number 6 is to invite customers to be heard. And I know that we do have at least one customer that would like to be heard. So
where would you like me?
come right over there. Okay. I think you're our first guest here, so I wasn't sure where to point. I was just going to tell Travis to leave.
Hi, my name is Mark Morgan. I think I might be your first guest because it's really hard to find, and it takes about 12 clicks to find out where indeed the meeting will be taking place. So that might be why I'm the first guest ever. I wanted to start by saying how much I've appreciated Moorhead Public Services folks on the ground. When my power goes out from a storm, it is back on in sometimes minutes and at most hours. When the water goes out, there's always someone that knocks on the door to let me know you've got 10 minutes, and I've really appreciated that. When the water main outside of our house on the block needed to be reconstructed. The workers on the ground were gracious to like let my kids get, you know, close enough to be safe, and they were sweet to my family, and I have appreciated for a very, very long time all of those kinds of customer service aspects that Moorhead Public Service offers. But I recently had an experience, and one that I'd heard echoed many, many, many times before, of what happens when you call Moorhead Public Service. And quite frankly, the abuse that you can end up sustaining from just simply calling your public utility. And so I never really given much thought when I would hear other people complain about what that might be like. And a certain amount of me thought maybe people were just complaining for the sake of complaining. But when I called a few weeks ago on a Saturday, when I got to a new house that I was not familiar with, that we just purchased, and in downtown Moorhead, it was the morning that there had been a brownout in South Moorhead, and I think that some customers had lost service in North Moorhead. So you guys are probably more familiar with that than I am. I was sure that the problem was Moorhead Public Service and not the house. I had reset the main breaker and called on the phone to say I needed help. And the gentleman on the phone was really condescending and insisted that I wasn't strong enough to reset a main breaker, and that I wasn't maybe smart enough to reset a main breaker. And it was a very terse conversation. I don't appreciate being spoken to that way, but we got off the phone in about 7 minutes, which my phone can attest to, and he was going to send someone out. In the next few minutes, I get a phone call from my brother, who's an electrician, and he had, when he walked through the house before we purchased, had looked at my my breakers, and he was like, there's actually something about your breakers that you won't have been familiar with. Let me tell you how to do this. So I quickly fixed it and called back 13 minutes later. And on that phone, or actually I didn't call back, my spouse did. And my spouse was told that if she couldn't tell him right then and there what had happened to fix the issue within the home, that he was going to charge a fee. And that fee was $160. I wasn't initially told about the $160. I was just told there was a fee. And I said, okay, well, I'm still on the phone with my brother. It's devolved into family excitement, and I'm not about to get off the phone with my brother to talk to this gentleman about something that really isn't time sensitive. So I said, have him call me back in 30 minutes or I'll call him back. And the response was, no, she gets on the phone and tells me now, or I'm charging you $160. That's a lot of money. That's an awful lot of money. So I got on the phone, and I was good and mad and did not tell him how I had fixed it. I did say, it doesn't matter how I fixed it. It doesn't matter if fairies flew down and fixed it for me. The fact was, I was wrong. The problem was inside my house. At this point, I thought it had been 10 minutes or 15. And I said, and in 10 minutes, you don't have someone at my house, so I'm canceling the call, and you can't charge me $160. And he said, yes, I can. And he was sadistic about it, and he enjoyed the way he was speaking to me. Fast forward, I felt pretty helpless, and I went online to a Facebook group where a lot of people from Moorhead get together and usually share things that we're really happy about, and said, I don't know what to do with this. And a lot of people chimed in, and I ended up being fortunate enough to get a call from Bill Schwand. And what I found out was, and this is by Saturday evening, that yes, there is kind of a $160 fee, but he can only find one time in the history of his time there that it's ever been charged. And what it came down to is that this gentleman on the phone was just having a power trip with me, hoping to ruin my weekend. It worked. Because it would have taken until Monday for me to find out that I wasn't going to be on the hook for $160. And I start thinking, oh, well, maybe this is a singular experience. And then all of these people commiserating with me that this isn't a singular experience, hundreds of people. And I actually can say hundreds because your Google reviews have 60 really angry people, and on social media, at least another 40. I think that was the most engaging post that that particular group has ever had. People who called Moorhead Public Service monsters, sadists, that they are the worst thing about Moorhead. I don't agree that Moorhead Public Service is the worst thing about Moorhead. I think that you're one of the greatest things about Moorhead. But your customer service is the worst part of you, and it's really bad. If any other entity that wasn't wasn't the only option, didn't have a monopoly, had a 1.6 star review, you would have been closed years ago. This is not a new thing. I took enough screenshots that I could read to you dozens of complaints about the cruelty that people feel that they've been subjected to by your customer service. And some of them are a month old, some of them are 2 years old. So this is not new. This is not new to you guys. Are you going to fix it? Because I'm probably going to have to call again, and other people are going to have to call again.
Mara and I had a really good conversation about this a couple weeks ago. So it's not a new topic for me tonight. As she indicated, she had a couple of at least one conversation, if not two, with Bill.
I had one with Bill and two with the other gentleman on the phone. I want to add one more thing in.
Yeah.
When I was on the phone with Bill, I asked him is he in the room?
No, okay. Bill's not here today.
It was very nice of him to call, but I am guessing that most people don't get a call from the general manager of the company when they've been treated unkindly. I asked him multiple times in the phone conversation to please listen to the recordings of our phone conversation between me and his staff, because he needed to hear how I was spoken to the first conversation and how I was threatened the second. That I wanted him to hear how his staff had spoken to me and the joy he took in it. And you guys don't record your customer service.
Yeah. We're piloting an effort right now to do that. In fact, I hope the budget committee is going to be discussing that as a part of the budget as we're moving toward the new year. But as I said, Mara and I had a good conversation about this. It is a tough experience that she had. Bill spent some time with the dispatcher that was involved, and I think hopefully we're getting style and substance and choice of words and maybe not lowering the boom with fees that they're not entitled to say they're going to assess. But the other part of this is I didn't even know there was a Google review or whatever they called it.
Everything.
didn't
Your
even know
shoelace
that.
has a Google rating, I'm sure.
So I went online and we are not treated well there. It's disappointing to hear what is being said. Now I've made the point over and over again that we carry the load for a lot of things that people are unhappy with about various services, including some comments about this. Not so much about electric service, as you've indicated.
No, it's mostly water.
We're pretty good about that.
And customer service. And there were a few people who
And
seemed
fees.
confused. Fees.
Yeah.
There were a few people who did seem confused about what they were complaining about, and perhaps they meant to be complaining about a different thing.
Yeah. Yeah, we seem to really need to clarify and get a little bit more clarity into what it is that is being provided as services from not only Moorhead Public Service but from the city of Moorhead, and then step up the customer service effort. I told you at the point that we got together to visit that this wouldn't die, this wouldn't languish someplace, that we would get to work on this. And you won't let it. Well, and I can assure you we're not going to let it either. We have work to do on this. And I think it's a matter of paying attention, but also catching up with the times.
Yeah.
Time and again, we've talked about how it is that we record some of these incidents, but also keeping track. And so I think based on that experience and others that now I've heard about and that we've been discussing.
I think that
we
there
can
also
improve.
are policies that you really need to look at as a group, and that would be how quickly you turn off people's water or electricity and what resources you refer them to before you do that. That's just a matter of being a decent company run by decent human beings.
Yeah.
There are resources. They may not know it. It takes takes the tiniest effort just to send an email or to say, hey, have you reached out to? That's one thing. Your billing practices are another huge complaint. You're not a lot of, if you read, again, I would encourage anyone involved in this organization to read your Google reviews. Go on Moorhead Equals Fantastic and hear what your community is saying about you. Not when they themselves have just felt that they were affronted, but when anyone brings up Moorhead Public Service, right? There are certainly accolades as well. There are certainly people who are so grateful that their water, electricity, the boots on the ground folks are doing a great job.
Yeah.
It's the customer service and the policy folks. So when many people are feeling like you shut off their water before they've been even notified that it's happened. And then there's a lot of people likened it to extortion to get their water turned back on. Complaints about billing practices and how often and when that happens. Payment practices, the fees associated with that. These are all things that actually are customer service. If you owned a nail salon and I charged you 3% every time you came in to get a pedicure, which, Dave, I'm sure you get lots of pedicures, but you wouldn't want to go there, right? And if something happened that you didn't make your appointment and I never was going to let you come back again unless I charged you that fee plus an additional $60, you would go someplace else because you would have that option, but your consumers don't have that option. So maybe look at making your practices more humane.
Since our first conversations too, we have been reviewing our fees and some of those reconnection fees and so forth that we talked about, and I think we're making progress towards something different there as well. So not ready to announce, but it is in what we're doing to assemble the next budget, and I think you'll be excited to hear something.
I would love to hear that there will be positive changes there.
Deb.
Just wanted to say a few things on, as a council member. So this is obviously, these kinds of things are, we're often the point person. I'm sure that my current and former council members could attest to that, when people have concerns that we do hear about it. And so if you've been following some of the things we've been discussing at council, one of the things we were looking at is increasing community engagement. And, we think it's really important that people feel that they are informed and engaged and that we are responsive to their concerns. And so one of the things that Mayor Judd did is he appointed a work group, and we just met for the first time last week, but we're actually looking at this citywide, so all of the boards and commissions and all the different agencies and departments, just to see, how are we doing? So how are we doing in terms of the places where people interact with us? Do people understand how to get information? Do they understand how they can have a voice? Do they feel that we're being responsive? And so, so we will be looking at it across the board and working with the different parts of the city to try to see where we can make improvements. And so, I will say the things that Mara brought up, it's not anything that's new to me, and I haven't been on for council for very long, but I've heard issues with with other places, but probably I would say more about Moorhead Public Service than any other aspect of our city. And so, but I do think that it is one of our greatest assets, our public utilities, and I think that there's things that we can do together to make it better so that we can address some of these.
Yeah, I think when the product is so superior, right? That all you have to do is treat people with dignity and kindness. That's just not a far stretch to all of a sudden become the most loved thing about Moorhead. That's what I would like to see. That's what I came here to say.
Well, thank you for coming to visit with us about it.
Thank you.
Members, anybody else?
Yep.
I would. Oh, I'm sorry, Heidi. Yeah.
Thanks, Dave. I was going to bring this up under old business, but since it relates to the topic, I'll bring it up now. Back a while ago, you and I had a conversation about ideally having a pool of money that would be set aside for people who are experiencing, some extreme hardships and can't pay their bills. And instead of shutting them off, they could take a short-term loan through the utility or the city, however we wanted to do that. We didn't know how that would look, who would run it. But I'm happy to say that there is somebody who wants to donate a significant amount of money to that pool and get that going sooner rather than later.
Oh, wow. Cool.
We just need to know on a monthly basis about how many people would be experiencing that kind of a hardship. Nancy, maybe you would have a guesstimate as to what that number might be. And maybe it's to the point where we can get a group together to start working on the how and and what would it look like, and who could administer this kind of program. So, big news. Hopefully, we can get something moving here quickly, and then eventually it should be self-funding as people are paying back their short-term loans.
I was going to ask, is it intended to be a lending program?
Yes.
And
Yep.
not a particular granting program?
Not a particular grant, a lending program. Most
Yep.
people want to pay their bills and don't want to be the person who has to beg for money and ask for money.
Yeah.
Most people enjoy feeling
Sure.
that they are responsible and making their payments,
Yeah.
and so eventually it would be a self-funding mechanism or a pool of money. But we just need to know how much would we, how many people experience that, and what's the amount of money do you think? And I don't expect you to have any of that tonight.
Yep, that would be a hard thing to do. We are working through some money situations with the city right now, so we've been meeting with city staff and working through some of that, changing some processes. So actually some of the processes in play right now are decreasing the number of disconnects we're doing.
Okay.
So that's good.
Yep.
From the customer perspective. It creates some other challenges otherwise. But we are working through that. And one of the things is you were talking about somebody managing a pool of money. And we've probably already got those experts in the community with the agencies that we already work with, like the Salvation Army and Lakes and Prairie and things like that. So I wonder if partnering more with them would be, not reinventing the wheel, but creating some other pool of funds for them to work with, because they do great jobs at doing that already. So I would see a partnership there.
Yeah, and we would definitely want this just to be a utility used for the utility bills. I guess I would worry if there was an outside agency. I would worry that maybe some of those funds might get, and who knows? I don't know how it would look. Maybe that's
It'd be investigating, but Lakes and Prairie is really that lead agency that we work with right now. So we do the referrals. Marl, like you said, everybody gets the referral over to several different places for assistance with bills and everything. Everybody sees that on their bills every month.
So I wonder,
so
then why are people complaining that were shut off without notice? Where did the referral come from if they didn't even know they were going to be shut off?
Well, we provide the information to the customer to reach out and make the referral.
Before or after you've shut them off?
Before they're provided that information.
But we have people in this room who've been shut off and didn't realize they were going to be shut off.
There isn't really an outreach from a person saying, there isn't really a phone call that says, we didn't get your bill last month, and now you've got 10 days before there isn't that piece.
No.
Right. So you go on vacation, or the bills, blows away, and the next thing you know, you're without water. Yeah. Again, that's a basic customer service that you just should never do to another human being.
Yeah, we do. We're looking at processes.
Do we have a question? Do we shut people off without giving them notice?
No, we don't.
Okay, thank you.
The process that goes on is they get a first bill, they get a second bill, they get a cutoff notice, and they get a phone call. So those are the steps of the process. They're laid out over a period of time, but those are the steps.
What's the period of time?
You're going to test me on, let's see, from the time the first bill goes out, for example, the first bill goes out on, say it's for January service, it goes out on February 3rd. It's due on February 23rd, so due February 23rd.
And so you get 30 or 60 days from the date that it was originally due?
30 more days, so another bill has gone out, so another 30 days from the original due date.
And that's the shut-off date?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Approximate. Everything is run, and the dates are calculated with the computer, so I can't be positive on the dates on the timelines, but about 30 days after the first bill they received was due.
Okay. I don't think that's enough time. I'm not in the business of this, but I think a family can really easily fall behind or miss a bill or go on vacation. And when it's something as necessary as water, I think it's something to look into, but that's in your hands. And your customers seem to agree with my assertion that maybe they need a little bit more time.
Okay, we're continually looking at that policy.
Heidi.
Thank you. Speaking of referrals, this again goes back to old business. Mary and I had learned that MPS was referring people to an outside agency to, like, for payday loans and predatory lending type things.
Pardon me?
That was stopped, right?
Pardon me?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Bill was here and told us.
It was.
Yeah.
I think it was an understanding. I mean, we're referring to agencies.
Right.
Right.
And one of them was a predatory lender.
Oh, okay, let me.
I don't recall the name off the top of my head, do you?
I can't recall off the top of my head, but
Well, we were,
Yeah.
we were,
Oh,
we were,
okay, okay.
okay, and they weren't being referred, they were listed on
That
top.
was listed and
of
was
the-
conceived,
of the
perceived
site
as
search.
a referral.
right. But if you
Into-
list it as,
wasn't.
if you list it, it's
It's
going to
a
be
referral.
perceived
Well,
as
No,
I'm
it
sorry.
isn't. It's a Google search.
I'm sorry,
It's a
listed
Google
where?
search.
on your
What?
bill.
On the bill.
On the bill?
On the bill. It's a predatory lender.
On the bill?
No, they're not on the bill. They're on the internet, and you do a search for Moorhead Public Service bill pay. They might pop up, but our site does not endorse.
I don't
them.
recall that we have anything listed
Yeah,
like
we
that on
had
our
a
bill.
discussion
On the
with
bill?
It was a couple months ago. We were sitting right in this room and we were having a conversation
Well-
about making sure that there isn't anything on the bill.
I'd like to bring that back.
Okay,
I'd like to bring that back, okay?
because
We're not prepared to discuss that today, but I would like to be prepared to discuss that at the next meeting.
Utility bills are in the top 5 reasons why people go to that cycle of
Well-
of payday loans.
Well, let's prepare for that conversation, but I'd like to bring that back.
Okay.
That's news to my
Right.
young ears.
Well, that's okay.
and-
Let's do some investigating and figure out
Yeah,
how
absolutely.
it's getting attached to MPS and if we
Yeah.
can change that. 'Cause we
No, that's-
definitely
no.
don't want to be
I want to
affiliated
understand
with-
what is being suggested and what is being clarified, but I especially want to understand what bill that was on. You know, so let's bring that back. Well, Mara, you've created a little excitement. Thank you.
Yay!
Before she leaves.
Oh, excuse me, John.
I guess a couple comments. I don't know, Heidi, if you would think my background would be helpful to be on that group as a commissioner. I would be willing to serve or whatever you think is appropriate. I already thought of that. Okay.
Yeah, I think
Okay.
it's, the group
Okay, yeah.
that Dave or you all think would be appropriate would be,
right.
I too would like to be part of that, as this has kind of been a mission of mine for quite a while.
Yeah. And next thing here, I don't know if anybody has apologized to, but if not, we as a commission should apologize to you for that negative experience.
Thank you.
So-
Bill did a wonderful job of apologizing, and so did Dave. And I appreciate it. It was a really bad experience. I just don't want it to happen anymore. And I love Moorhead, and I actually really like the services. I don't want to see I don't want my family to be treated this way, and I certainly don't want the people in our community to be treated this way anymore.
Yep. And then final thing is, it's frustrating because this has been discussed for some time now about customer service and how you treat people and in a professional way. And it has to be resolved. And part of that is because I think it was the last meeting here, we definitely wanted to purchase a recording system so we can be aware of the discussions that are being held with people here for it. So I think that's another, plus for continuing or moving on with purchasing that system. So again, thank you.
Thank
for
you.
coming.
I think that would go a long way. I mean, not just to get that employee who was rude, but it's also a learning experience for your employees. When someone says, "Hey, I was just treated really poorly," you can then take that staff member in a non-punitive way and teach them how they could have handled. You're never going to get someone who's calling MPS on a Saturday who isn't already agitated, right?
Yeah.
And it's the person who answers the phone job to maybe even help diffuse that a little bit.
Well, we're sending a member of our team to a utility conference that is going to be 3 days of customer service and so forth. So we're
Sounds like a
taking
lot of fun.
so we're taking real steps, to really change things. And as I said, we're talking about some of the fees and the structure that you had pointed out, but also we've had discussions about here before about whether it is that some of these things are necessary, or are they punitive, or are they just arbitrary. So we're working through that.
Fortunately, it's
and we're making
measurable.
progress. So, yeah. So that's,
I wanted to suggest too that, and actually I spoke with Mara about this, and I mentioned this to a few other people, that that we should recognize that the folks that are doing this work are probably they have to deal with people when it's a difficult time. I mean, so imagine day when a lot of your day is spent helping people that are struggling with problems. And I'm not, I wasn't involved with this, but it certainly doesn't sound like this situation necessarily was handled in the way that probably most people like. But what I would like to see is, besides things like if we're talking about recording, but also looking at some ways to provide some rewards and positive, looking at it from a positive way. And so, I think we could see that there's companies that have done things like having customer service evaluations that are automatic. So when you have an interaction, something goes out to the customer right away, that they can give not just feedback, because I know this from my work doing survey research, if you just leave it out to chance, what you get are the extremes. You get people when they are really angry.
Oh, sure.
But if you have something where it is an automatic, that we could give feedback and we could acknowledge the folks when they really are doing a great job, and tie that in with some other incentives. And so we've probably all seen that with businesses where you can tell that they really, the person on the other end of the phone, they want you to fill out the evaluation because they know that they did a good job, and they want you to be able to report that. And so I would like to see I would like to see some plans for some things to improve customer service that would not just focus on the more perhaps the punitive side, but also looking at some providing some recognition for when folks are doing a really good job too.
thank you. Anything further, folks?
When should I be back?
When would you like to come back?
The moment you guys are going to tell me that you've put some things in place that are concrete, and
Well-
not before then.
Well, yeah, we know how to get in touch with each other, so
Okay.
so we'll do that.
Okay.
Okay, great,
Thank
thank you. Okay, moving on. We've had one little foray into old business. Any other old business? John?
Yep. A couple things maybe just I noticed here in the bill section. There was a billing that we had paid for appliances for several different. I think that's an opportunity for us to promote what we do for supporting some low income, and I don't know if we get enough bang out of our buck there of the work we do in that area. So I'm just thinking maybe we just need to look a little bit how we can either promote that or acknowledge.
Maybe a little further explanation.
Well, in the bills, there was, and Nancy, you might address this. We purchased appliances for individuals for the Bright Light program. Is it that program?
It's a low-income program.
Weatherization program.
Yep.
Oh, okay. I was going to say, we're what? Now it makes sense as soon as you pointed it.
Dennis Eisenbrown, Dennis Eisenbrown, Energy Services Manager. The program we're talking about is called the Low Income Weatherization Program. And it is basically it's a requirement by the state of Minnesota that we provide 2% of our residential revenue is used to buy appliances or in some way help people who meet a certain threshold of income, that we help them with something that helps their energy consumption, whether it's money or some sort of assistance, whether it can be window coating, anything that would help conserve energy. And the way we do it is we've chosen to do it by providing appliances that are Energy Star rated for these people who are identified by the West Central Minnesota Community Action Agency. They identify the customers, and then they provide us a list of the appliances that they need from a pre-approved list, and then we order those appliances, they're installed, and off they go. So, and that's about $35,000 a year is what we use.
That's good to know. Thank you.
The next thing here, and just more of an acknowledgement here, I think everybody was aware of the storms that we had and the extra work that was done for our crews. I just noticed some meals for overtime and that sort of thing here. So I think we just really acknowledge the work that our crews have done during this nasty weather streak. So if they haven't been thanked enough, thank them again here from the commissioner.
Joe?
We actually put on a little feed for him at noon one day with some brats and some potato salad.
Oh, cool.
And that was not out of public service funds. That was out of our own funds. So we kind of brought everybody in and fed them for a noon meal just to say thank you. So, yes, we did reiterate that.
I'd only add a comment. I was watching the reports on a couple of those storm occasions as well, and I see the reports for the guys on the other side of the river. Boy, they had a lot of calls, and you guys didn't. So part of the compliment is the maintenance of the system and the condition of the system is such that we can withstand some storms too. Because gosh, they were busy compared to what we were getting for calls. So kudos on that too. It's helpful that we don't have the outage at all, and so I would offer that congratulations as well.
And Joe did a good job cooking the brats.
Yeah, with the rest.
And the final item, just noticed that Jerry was able to attend some training. And I'm just thinking here, as far as when we have staff that attend a training session here, we should kind of get an update as far as what was accomplished, what they learned, anything we should be implementing based on that training for it. So it just kind of my thought. I believe investing in training. I think it's very important to train our staff.
Cool.
But I also think that we should probably get a report back of what was learned from those training sessions.
Anything further? Mary?
I got nothing.
Oh, your light was on. I thought you were ready to go for it. So, okay. Any further old business? Okay. Moving on then, City Council. Any report, comments?
I don't have anything, but other than what I reported in old business, but Deb might have something she wants to share. Okay.
No, we're good. Okay. Members of the Public Service Commission, activities, reports? Hearing none. Nancy, you're sitting in for our general manager.
General manager provided a written report. In addition to that, if you take a look at item number 3, Commission Chair Dave Anderson presented to the City Council last week on our preliminary budget information, and we'll be meeting with our budget committee the next couple of weeks here and really going through a lot of numbers and trying to finalize purchase power costs and things like that. So that is in the works. One of the takeaways from that meeting was that some questions or statements were made about the MPS rates are too high, the utility bill is too high. So what we thought we would do would be to put together a presentation to the public that's listening at home so that they can have an understanding of the utility bill and what the components on that bill are. So we've asked our controller, Mark Moylan, to make a presentation on that and to show the customers at home what all is included in that utility bill.
Are we going to also include comparisons to the other utilities that are in the metro?
We
Is
have,
that part of the
yeah, we have a comparison on electric rates in there.
Yep. Okay.
Yes.
Heidi.
Will the presentation have information on how you set rates based on purchasing power and all those things? I mean, without getting too much into the weeds.
Yeah.
I think it's helpful for people to know that we don't create our own electricity here. We don't have a power plant. We have to buy that power from somewhere, and it really, our rates really are dependent on how much we are being billed from our power producer. So that might be helpful too.
Yeah, I think, and that one will be in the rate hearing. Okay. So we'll have a rate hearing on October 15th at 5:30 City Council chambers. So we'll have more of that whole budget picture in that presentation. Mark's presentation tonight will be, here's what you see on your bill, and here's where it comes from. So just kind of breaking down the components of the bill so people understand everything that they're being charged for on that bill. So just a summary of here's each charge, here's where it comes, here's where it comes from.
And that's being done tonight, or that's being done at the next council?
Nope, we're ready for that tonight.
We're going to do some
So-
of that this evening.
Yep,
Okay.
there was yep. So if you're ready, Mark, I think is ready to do that presentation. Controller Mark Moylanen, so he's going to walk us through what the utility bill looks like.
Very quickly, is there a thought that this would be part of our presentation in 2 weeks? That the public would be interested in hearing as a part of that?
For council members to hear.
Yeah. It seems to me that would be a really good idea.
I think the city managers requested that it also be done at the next council meeting, or at the one that Bill was.
The one later in October.
I recall from an email.
Mm-hmm.
No, and now it's bumped to November, I think.
I think it has been because
He wasn't even
Bill has to be absent. Yeah.
Right. We can surely incorporate this into that rate hearing again in 2 weeks, so it wouldn't be hard to do to put up some slides and just show, what it will show is the total utility bill. It's not focused just on electric and water. It's just here's your total bill.
Okay. Well, with that, Mark, you're up.
All right, well, thank
Okay.
you. Susan was going to double check and make sure the PowerPoint
Get some
comes
slides.
up. Yeah.
Okay.
But yeah, as Nancy indicated, this presentation is basically information. There appears to be some confusion based on the presentation that Dave made, and just comments we received over at Moorhead Public Service regarding. Thanks.
I didn't confuse anybody, by the way.
Yeah, you're correct. You're correct. And so as we met, on Wednesday, just looking at this, we thought, well, what if we made a presentation and this could serve a couple of purposes. One, it's for this meeting, and two, we're also going to look at possibly publishing it somehow on our website, just as information for customers, so they can see this and get an understanding of their bill. So, at that, this is the presentation right here. As you can see, what this presentation will do is present the current charges that appear on a monthly utility bill, and again, this is focused on residential bills. So you won't see anything regarding commercial or industrial because, again, their billing varies based on size of entities, et cetera. And it should be noted that, Moorhead Public Service does the billing and collection for the city of Moorhead, the charges, and that's been in place for over 30 years. So the utility bill that a customer receives does include two components, Moorhead Public Service charges as well as city of Moorhead charges. Of course, it's not working. There we go. So this is a sample utility bill for a homeowner. And this is based on a residential home of approximately $185,000, and this shows the average consumption. The average user uses about 1,126 kilowatt hours for electric consumption and approximately 500 cubic feet of water. So that's about 2.5, 3 people per residence. And so as you can see, the bill consists of two parts, the Moorhead Public Service part at the top, the electric and water, and then the lower half of the bill presents the City of Moorhead charges. This slide shows a representative bill for an apartment in the City of Moorhead. So it's slightly different, and as you can see, there are no water charges or fire protection charges on the Moorhead Public Service section of the bill, because those charges are assessed and paid by the building owner. So they pay the water charges, fire protection per se. The other charges that are on the bill, again, are assessed to each apartment unit, each individual unit, and a total bill for an average apartment using about 413 kilowatt hours of electric consumption comes to about $111.43. Here's another presentation showing the two bills side by side. So as you can see, a homeowner pays about 2.5 times what an apartment dweller would use. And again, that's because you're paying for water, and usually in a home there's a little bit more electric consumption, as you can see, almost 3 times on average. At this point, we'd like to just go line by line and just show how the charges are calculated, what they're based on for both the Moorhead Public Service charges and the City of Moorhead charges. To start with, on the bill, the Minnesota sales tax is listed, and all residents are charged sales tax based on electric consumption. If you have heat,
during the months of October, I believe, or November through April, if you have heat as your primary, your electric as your primary heat source, you don't pay sales tax on any of your electric usage because there isn't a separate meter, but the state of Minnesota does allow that exemption. But in general, if your heat is, or if your electricity is for non-heating uses, you do pay sales tax year-round, and it's the standard, 6.75%, or 6.875 plus the 5% Clay County tax. The second item on everyone's bill is your electric charge, and your electric charge consists of two items. It's generally a fixed monthly charge plus a charge per kilowatt hour used. So in the case of a homeowner, the electric charge is $118.84, which is $14.40 fixed, and the remainder is a variable charge based on the amount of electricity they used. Apartment renter pays the same amount. They pay a $14.40 flat fee plus a per kilowatt hour charge.
How have we established the minimum charge for electric?
The monthly charge? Mm-hmm. It's based on rate study information. The rate study is done. Vance, you can correct me. We do a minimum. I think every 5 years we'll do a rate study, electric rate study. And the analysis from that is they try to cover the cost of the electricity that's actually used, as well as recapture and cover all of the fixed system charges. Mm-hmm. So the rate study takes an in-depth look at what the utility needs to cover its costs. Okay. So that, again, is reviewed. And
how often, again, do we do the rate study?
At a minimum of every 5 years. Sometimes we might do it frequently if something changes in the utility market, but every 5 years minimum.
Mary, feel free to just jump in, folks.
Feel free. I'd love to answer questions.
Okay, I have a question. Taking a look at this and then hearing that there is no sales tax during the winter months for heat sources, do we have a program available for the snowbirds who are actually gone from like November to April? Do we have anything in place for that, or are they charged the minimum still?
The minimum charges still exist because the minimum charges, again, is primarily focused to cover your fixed cost of the system per se, as well as your billing charges, your meter reading, customer service, and things like that. Whereas the consumption charge is based on how much is actually used. So they may leave and turn their heat way down. Their charges will drop, but that fixed component will still remain. Okay. But the utility charge itself, because fewer kilowatt hours are used, the charge will drop. But those charges will remain, as will the water, as well as the city charges.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. The next item on a standard bill is your water charge. And a water charge is similar to electric, except there's not kilowatt hours, but this is based on how much water actually flows through the meter. And it's a fixed charge currently for a standard residential. Most meters are 5/8 or 3/4 inch, and it's $11.80 per month. And then we do have two rates. We have a summer rate and a winter rate that we refer to. Summer rate's a little bit higher, as you can see. And overall, the charge for a residential home using about 500 cubic feet on average per month is about $31.90. The next item that appears on the bills is the fire protection charge, and this has been separated out. And the fire protection charge is a fixed monthly charge that is designed to cover the costs associated with having a water system that is sufficient to handle a fire emergency per se. That includes the cost of larger mains, the water towers, the high pressure pumping station that was recently added about 4 or 5 years ago to also assist with our water pressure throughout the city. And this charge is assessed throughout all of the units within the city. As you can see, there's higher rates for your apartment buildings, your commercial and industrial. And so if you look in the apartment column, you'll see that there isn't a set charge, so they're not assessed charges individually. The apartment or multi-tenant building owner is actually assessed the fire protection charge. And so again, that's basically the Moorhead Public Service portion of the bill, the electric and water. And as I indicated earlier, apartment is roughly about $56 with tax and electricity. And the average $185,000 home – we'll have a bill of about $161.35. The next series of slides focuses on the City of Moorhead charges and how they are assessed. And starting with this, we look at the first one, which is your garbage charges. And the garbage charges are actually broken up into 3 separate sections. The first is the container or consumption charge, and it's assessed to individual houses as well as each individual apartment. So as you can see on the chart, there are 3 different sized containers for regular garbage that are out there, and there is a set charge for each apartment that is equivalent to the smallest tote. A question that we frequently get in customer service is, why am I paying this when I'm just putting it in a dumpster? And I guess our response has been is that the apartment owner is actually just paying for the rental of the dumpster itself. They're not paying for the volume of garbage that's placed into it. So the charge is assessed individually to each apartment to account for the garbage that they place into the containers. Again, we do want to stress that there are the 3 sizes. So, if you do have the larger size and you're only filling it halfway or a third of the way, you don't want to consider reducing to a smaller size container as a way to, again, watch your costs.
Mine's never too small.
Yeah, there are weeks that, it's full. But on the other side, that the recycling charge is assessed to every unit, and that is currently $3.59, whether a homeowner or apartment, and that is non-taxable. And the reason it is listed is because the state of Minnesota exempts sales tax on the portion of the garbage charge that is related to recycling. So, in essence, everybody pays the $11.76 for the homeowner with the 64-gallon tote, plus $3.59, for about $15 for garbage. That's their cost. But because of the state of Minnesota rule, it's separated into 2 charges. And it's, again, strictly to get the tax benefit, which is 9.75% for solid waste tax. The next item on the bill that is covered is the wastewater charge. And again, the wastewater charge consists of 2 components. For a homeowner, it's a flat connection fee of $19.07 plus $2.40 per every 100 cubic feet of water that runs through the system. For a multi-family tenant or apartment, they just pay the $19.07 connection fee for the wastewater disposal. And the reason for that is because they do not have individual meters for each apartment. So the landlord or owner pays for the volume that goes through the system based on how much water was processed into the complex itself.
Mark.
Go ahead, question?
Yeah. Any of the comments that I've heard, I think this is the one item or line item that I hear the most issues with, as far as I pay for it and then I got to pay to get rid of it.
That is correct.
So can you just talk a little bit more of how that item was established and the reason it was established to be added to a billing?
That is a question I really can't answer because this isn't an item that we have any control over. We aren't involved in the rate studies that determine how these rates were set. As I indicated, we are the contractor for the city, and we bill for them, and so we rely on the rate schedule, the rate chart, to determine how to set it up within our system to bill.
Okay. So if a customer calls and questions that, how have you trained your staff to respond to that question then?
Well, at this point, we would transfer them out to the wastewater department, and hopefully someone out there can answer it. If not there, then they would refer to somebody, in the city hall to answer that question.
That must be a rate sort of a conversation that the council has from time to time, or budget cycles.
Yeah, it would be, the money, the fee that's being assessed is based on the cost to treat that wastewater. Yeah. When it leaves your house, it has to use the pipes to go somewhere to be cleaned and filtered and all that good stuff.
Right.
Thank you, Dave. Another thing, too, the wastewater charge is common. When I was at the League of Minnesota Cities conference, I got excited about a wastewater session. Yeah, okay. Anyway, wastewater charges are universal, And with that, also, because they're having to filter and clean more and more out of the water, more microbeads from all the plastics and everything else. And so actually, in light of the cost, I would see in the future it actually going up because of more treatment necessary and updating of equipment. So that one is not a, oh, City of Moorhead's gotcha. That's a universal across the board.
Excuse me, John, you're
Well,
still up.
yeah, the issue with that I would have is that the utility already owns those pipes and they already filter it, but now they're being charged again to utilize the utility pipes and systems. So it's a double charge for using the utility, but the city is collecting the fee for that. If I understood the explanation correctly.
Well, and that was my best explanation with my limited wastewater knowledge.
Different pipes.
John, just a brief background, and I'll try to give a pretty simple explanation, but the water utility has its own distribution network, treatment plant. The wastewater utility also has its own collection system and treatment plant, so you could view them as two separate utilities with two separate infrastructure systems for two entirely different functions.
Yeah.
I'll just mention, because I know Dave is aware that I had a citizen that had some questions about this, and I think I understand the answer now, and this is very helpful. So, so he lives in an apartment and was wondering, first of all, why he's paying the same amount for wastewater as someone next to him who has 3 people and he's only 1, and also thought that we were double dipping because his landlord is paying wastewater and he is. My understanding is that there's actually 2 separate fees in a way. There's the flat fee, so he's paying the $19.07 that every apartment is charged. That's the flat monthly fee. It's not based on volume. Then there's a separate, the one that's based on volume, the metered one, and the landlord is paying that. Whereas if you're a homeowner, you actually pay both of those. So you pay both the volume and the flat fee. So in that respect, they're not being hit with as much because the landlord's covering it. And it's not really that we're double dipping. They're 2 separate fees.
Really helpful, Mark.
That is correct,
Thank you.
yes.
Okay.
If there aren't any other questions, I'll go on to the next slide. And the next slide is another one that we get quite a few questions on, and unfortunately it's the stormwater utility. And as you can see, homeowner pays $10.21. Each apartment unit itself pays $10.21. And again, it's another utility. The rate has been set, and we do get the similar questions that you get. Why do I pay the 1 and a 3, and why am I paying it and not the landlord? And the landlord is not assessed this fee. So it's shared by everybody within the unit, the complex, that stormwater charge.
So essentially, it's a dwelling unit fee, whether you're an apartment or a home.
That is correct.
And it's all the same.
It's the same. It's flat, yes. Another item on the bill, and this is actually 3 separate charges that are combined into one. It's been combined into one for a number of years, but the forestry and pest control consists of a separate charge for forestry of $4.32, plus pest control charges that total $3.26, and it consists of the animal control, right-of-way maintenance, and mosquito control. Same charge again is assessed to a homeowner, as assessed to each individual apartment, and that is currently at $7.58 per month. And everybody, the question we get is, I don't have any trees in my yard. I don't have any. And our explanation we've been provided is, this is your overall city boulevard trees and the parks, and everybody participates in that. And again, this is a participatory fee, more or less, is how we kind of view it. The same as mosquito control and the animal control. Everybody's participating.
Yeah.
Your oxygen.
Yeah. If you do go to Google reviews, just take a gander at a lot of the comments that come in on these. It's actually pretty interesting reading, and some of it's kind of funny. But there was one in particular. We don't even have a forest, but we have a forestry fee. But I think we have a lot of trees. So yeah. But when you take a look, you'll see, I think, every one of these lines addressed in some of the various comments. Mary?
As one who had a family of 9 skunks move in under my front door this June, I'm all over the 50-cent animal control fee.
They got all over that.
They're wonderful
Yeah,
people.
That's worth the 50 cents. So. Go ahead, Mark.
Well, we'll go on to the next slide. I have no comment for that. I'm glad I didn't have the skunks in my yard.
Yeah, something stinks. Yeah, whatever.
And the last line item that we'll discuss, or I'd like to explain or show, is the streetlight utility. And the street utility was the latest charge that was added, and it was added in January of 2015. And it, again, was assessed citywide to residential, each house as well as each individual apartment unit. And again, that cost, the common question we receive is, I don't have a street light in my front yard. Why am I paying this? I live in an apartment. And again, this is to cover infrastructure costs, as well as the cost of the electricity to power those lights. And so everybody, again, it's a shared service charge that's assessed individually on each monthly bill. So again, that just to highlight or summarize, the city of Moorhead charges for an average homeowner are approximately $69.36 per month, and for an apartment they're approximately $54.83. And again, 6 or 7 line items. Just as a little sidebar, the most frequently asked question we get at the customer service side it has to do with the bills. And I used to rent an apartment in Fargo. My bill was only $50. Now that I rent an apartment in Moorhead, why is my bill so high? And so the common response that we use in the customer service area is to just kind of look at the charges individually and say that we're very competitive on the electricity side. Based on review of rates over on Excel, Cass County Electric, the average bill for electricity over there is slightly higher than ours, very similar, very close. Where we differ, again, is why they ask why I used to be 50, is, again, the charges that appear on the apartment bill, and they're assessed individually. Whereas it appears in Fargo, those types of charges might be billed to the building owners, and they're collected as part of the rents. So, 2 different collection philosophies. So that's the most common question we receive in customer service related to these types of bills.
It's a whole nother can of worms, but it'd be interesting to see the comparison of rents for the same places, because I would doubt that anybody's cutting the rents on that side because they're getting a deal. So we can't defend or promote that, but that is a significant difference.
Correct. And again, we do spend a lot of time, going over with the residents of the renters. This is why the bills appear to be so much higher. So that's the presentation, just basically a review of every item on the bill, where the charges are.
I think we should definitely
taken
have
from,
this
so.
at the right here. I think it's good information. Mary?
I do too, Mark. That was excellent, the breakdown, and I would like to see that at a council meeting or some other type, or possibly even the PowerPoint onto the website. That's fabulous, the breakdown, and it made sense of everything.
There are a lot of items, and again, if you just look at it, you can get overwhelmed very quickly, because there's a lot of line items out there, and to take them and break them down line by item. I wish we had more time to do that with everybody, but this is our first attempt to really try to do that, and we definitely want to try and get it out in other forums.
Now, we were all calm, cool, and collected and interested while we were listening to you. I think the dynamics are a little different on the telephone every once in a while for your customer service people who are getting these kinds of questions. Are they all as prepared as you were just now to discuss these various line items, so that there is that opportunity to talk about what's real as opposed to what is perceived?
They are. I mean, this is part of the training that we do when we hire. And we go through this all the time. In fact, took these slides and actually used them as a training tool this week, and we handed them out to the staff so that they can look at them and see if they have questions. And they all, they understood this, because we deal with it every day. We do get a lot of questions on what are these rates, what are these charges.
Deb?
One suggestion I have is something that we talked about in this work group is things like this, make a little video of it. I mean, your presentation was very helpful. If we have a little video and you have a link on the webpage and it's just what do you want to know about our bills? And they could click on that and watch a little tutorial, and I think, it'd be a great way to help people get that information.
Yeah. YouTube.
Yeah.
Yeah, people are a lot more willing to watch a video than read.
Yeah.
Unless it's a text, then they're happy to read. So.
And we do have this in place as part of the rate hearing, so we will update it with our proposals for the rates, after we've had a chance to meet with the budget committee.
Cool.
And see what their recommendations are. So, our intent is to keep putting this information out because it's not secret.
Okay.
Does anybody else have any other questions? I'd be more than happy to answer them.
Are we
through? I could address the
Okay.
DOXO thing if you wanted to go back to that.
The which?
The DOXO and the credit card predatory lender.
How about some
I could clarify that if you'd like, but if you want to hear it from Bill, we can definitely.
I'd like to save that one for
Okay.
a little later, but yeah, keep it handy.
Okay.
We are ringing like crazy.
Okay. Well, thank you.
All right. Item number 12 is an item to approve specifications and authorize advertisement for bids for lime sludge dewatering facility. Back to
Ralph, are you presenting this one?
back to sludge. Chris is manipulating the slideshow. There we go. I just noticed the color of the slide. It's not the color of the paint in here. It is the color of what we're talking about. So.
Yeah. Chris Knutson, Water Division Manager. This is a big project that we've been talking about for quite some time. I've got a little presentation prepared. It's pretty brief. Feel free to kind of chime in with questions as we go along. I just thought it would be kind of nice to give a little background with respect to kind of where we've been and where we're heading on this project. Just a little background on the Moorhead water treatment process before we dive real deep into the sludge component of the process. Basically, we serve both Moorhead and Dilworth, about 46,900 folks. We use water from the Red River and mainly the Buffalo Aquifer with some supplement from the Moorhead Aquifer as our source water. We basically take that water from those respective sources, employ lime softening, ozonation, dual media filtration, and finally chloramination, adding chlorine as a final disinfectant. So one of the key things that we'll be talking about as part of our lime softening process, you'll notice there's a little thing called waste sludge in that first mixer. That's our softening basin. We'll be talking about that waste sludge and what the waste sludge from our process looks like. It actually looks, I'll give it kind of the little mix, but it looks kind of brownish, whitish, and it's mostly water. But this is, if you want, we can pass it around.
I have a good eye for color.
I have a small guy, so we do a lot of show and tell. So
would I lie to you, Mary?
So that's what the sludge looks like. That's kind of what we'll be talking about today.
Our drinking water is much better than that.
$7 million, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Really lovely.
Oh, you can open and find out. It doesn't smell that strong. It just kind of smells.
Go for it.
It tastes salty. I can tell you that.
No.
Yeah, it tastes salty.
Here, I'm out. Here, put a little ice on it. Yeah.
So, kind of some of the background on this project and kind of how we've gotten to this point. About 2015, Minnesota Pollution Control Agency modified some of the rules regulating sludge disposal. So we actually currently store our sludge just to the east of the Moorhead wastewater treatment facility. We have 12 ponds. And what the ponds actually look like, there's a little inset picture. You can kind of see that big area of stored sludge. And thank you, Dave. And over the past several years, we've approached capacity on those ponds, and MPCA has regulated how we deal with that respective residual moving into the future. In order to prepare for kind of how we deal with this sludge issue, we started initiating some study in 2016. We completed the lime sludge residuals management plan in 2017, and then we looked at possibly land applying the sludge in 2018. And one thing I didn't note on here, but as part of our facility study and preliminary engineering, we also applied for a drinking water revolving fund loan to finance a potential facility with respect to sludge disposal. So it's been a long road to this point, but what we're looking at right now is a lime sludge dewatering facility. And just some of the basics as to what this facility would consist of and what it would do. The facility is just on the northwest side of the water treatment plant campus. So the water treatment plant, you can see, is that big kind of blue roof building. We reserved some expansion area to the north of the water treatment plant for future growth and expansion. We're proposing to locate the lime sludge dewatering facility just to the west of that proposed future expansion. And conveniently, that facility would be located kind of in the existing roadway, and that would allow for trucks to basically pick up the sludge from that facility and allow for future expansion of the facility as both the treatment plant and facility grow. And we'll dive into some of the details of what the facility does, what it looks like in the next few slides. Basically, what the facility will do is take kind of the liquid sludge, which I passed around, and turn it into a thickened sludge. Basically, take the water out. If you've ever pressed like mozzarella cheese or anything, got the water out of that cheese, we're basically doing the same thing as sludge, compressing that sludge, turning it into a cake, and collecting that water. And so that image on the right-hand side of the screen there is what the sludge press will actually look like. Basically, just physically press out the water, and you're left with a dewatered lime cake, which would be left to be hauled away. Oh, sorry, Dave.
Bombay doors.
Is that like a hydraulic press, or how is that system?
Hydraulic and mechanical, yeah. So here's kind of the layout for the building itself. The primary components of the building really are we're taking that sludge in a liquid form, thickening it in a gravity thickener. That's at the lower right-hand portion of the screen. It's basically a basin where we'll mix and thicken the sludge. Once the sludge is thickened, it's fed into that mechanical dewatering press, which I just showed a picture of. So those are the two main components of the building itself. There's a lot of electric and support components that go with it as well.
Yeah, you can see how much it's already settled once we
Yep.
set it down.
Yeah. So the trick is basically taking all of that water out, and that's what we'll be doing with this facility. With respect to what the exterior of the building looks like, we've been very budget conscious in our approach for this facility. We're trying to reduce as much cost as we can and do it in a really efficient way. One of the things that we'll be doing or we're proposing to do with the facility is we'll try to match the facade of the existing water treatment plant, basically have kind of the same brick facade and a metal roof. But one of the components of the facility exterior is that because of the tank, the gravity thickener tank location in the building itself, one of the sides will have basically a concrete stained concrete side. So you can kind of see that white gapish area, that white gap in two of the images. That's actually it'll be kind of a stained concrete, and that's as a result of the tank location within the building itself. So that's kind of what we're looking at in terms of what the building will look like. It's going to be relatively high. I believe it's about 40 plus feet high. So it'll be 2 stories, and the reason for that is when the press will actually be on the second floor. We'll drop the lime cake into those trucks and haul the lime cake away.
Is there room for a penthouse apartment for Commissioner Ralph?
There will be a control room, so if you consider that an equal to...
He likes to be close to this project, you know.
Yeah. So. In terms of project budget and schedule, we included $7 million in the 2019 Water Division budget. The current estimate is $7.026 million. That's the most recent estimate, so that includes the design fees as well. For the sludge project itself, it does not include, we've talked quite a bit about a future pond that will be needed as well. It does not include the construction cost for that future pond. But in terms of kind of where we're at for the project, we're looking to bid here in the very near future with possible award in November and maybe even starting construction possibly this year. We're looking at a slightly less than 2-year construction time frame, which I think will be appropriate for the project. And that's kind of where we're at in the
Chris, if you would,
grand scheme of things.
Would you restate why it is that we're here? You know, we've never had to build one of these before. Now we need to build one of these. You know, what is it that has occurred in the environment and industry and the way we process water? Why are we here spending $7 million on something that we've never had before?
Yeah, so I painted an overview of PCA's rule changes in 2015.
Yep.
And, you know, with kind of diving into the detail of what their rule changes mean for Moorhead, they basically categorized it as an industrial waste. Previously, it was categorized as possible beneficial use material.
Yep.
That categorization to industrial waste has really kind of changed the game in terms of how we can store the material long term. So now we can store it, but because of that categorization, we'll have to, if we did a pond, you know, when we do this future pond, we'll have to do all sorts of groundwater monitoring. It essentially becomes a landfill, although we're not creating a landfill as one would traditionally think of it. PCA will require things that are almost akin to a landfill. That's with respect to the ponds themselves. With respect to this facility, we're still looking at options for where that lime cake will go. It will either probably go to a landfill, or we'll land apply it, or we'll have somebody haul it away. We're still looking at those options right now.
Heidi?
Chris, do we have any idea how much the maintenance will be to get rid of the sludge, or any estimates as to how much that'll cost a year?
I believe we've programmed approximately $350,000 per year.
Wow.
So it's very expensive to, 350 to $500,000, I believe. Yeah, it depends on, it's $500,000. When we originally looked at, there'll be some cost variation depending on if we take it to a landfill, it'll depend on what they charge us per wet ton of the material. If we take it somewhere else, we may be able, we're working on those details, but they're important financially because
exactly.
It's a big cost.
How much weight do you think per year?
I think it's like 3,600 tons. 3,700.
You know, we've had this conversation before. You know, if it's something that is naturally occurring in our environment, it's not really a new new mixture, a new compound that is lethal or dangerous. You'd just think there would have to be some kind of use for it. If it's already in the water, gosh, it's just frustrating that it's going to cost that much money just to dump it. When where are our young kids coming up with an idea to reuse this stuff?
We'd love.
Maybe MPS needs to make a contest.
A contest
Yeah.
of what to do with these cakes,
There you go.
besides put them in a bakery.
Yeah.
Yes.
Thanks, Chris.
Yeah, well, because there's
We're-
a lot of it, yeah, I mean, we'll
we're
produce a ton
still
of it.
working on
3,700
that piece. You know, we'd love to see it be reused. Unfortunately, the soils here really it's not favorable for land application. Around Wadena, it would be.
Yeah, we tried that.
Around St. Cloud, they pay money for it. So,
Oh.
but there's a lot of trucking costs that goes
Oh,
along
I
with
suppose,
it.
yeah.
So, you know, we're that piece of the puzzle is a very important one.
Yep. Thanks, Chris.
And Chris, maybe you want to just address, we had a couple years ago looked at acquiring land to dump it.
Yeah.
And the cost of land and cost of trucking and that sort of thing, and it was a no-win kind of scenario. You spend $2 or $3 million here, you spend $3 million here. It was a real difficult examination. I think Ralph and I and the staff tried to go around and around, and we asked a lot of hard questions of them to try to figure out what methods would be best, and it unfortunately came down to this.
Yeah, this is about the 23rd inning on this ball game. You know, we've been at it for a long time. You know, so
Yeah, maybe just to put it in perspective a little bit too. Chris, remind us again, what's your annual budget on the water side?
It's for revenue.
Yeah.
It's about $10 million.
So $10 million revenue, and we have to build a $7 million sludge plant, plus spend $350,000 to $500,000 a year to haul it away.
Yeah.
Something that we used to be able to just pump it to Heidi's point, pump and let it sit, and no issue, right? So, you know, it's not an expense we wanted to do, and as much as I laugh about the facility, it's not something I want, right? But we need to build it, and it's very expensive, and it just adds on to cost overall running the utility.
Yeah. I think that's why we've taken a very cost-conscious approach to the facility and tried to really make it as MPS will be performing quite a bit of work associated with the project and really trying to save cost.
Well, and we are looking at rates here in a couple of weeks, and we don't expect to be looking at an electric increase, but we are looking at an increase in water rates. Now, when you look at a 5.8% increase in water rates or something like that, you know, it is relative pennies. You know, it isn't like we're proposing an increase like that for electricity, but as Ralph just said. Compared to the total budget for water, this is a lot of dough spread out over some years, but it's a lot of dough then every year then to deal with the sludge. So, Ralph.
Well, but also keep in mind that we had pre-agreed on the increase for this year, but that was earmarked for the replacement, of 20-some miles of bad cast iron pipe we still have in the ground.
Yeah.
So this is in addition to
Yes.
all that. So.
Yeah, that is in addition to that, but. And the commitment to that main replacement is very real and very necessary. So we keep on driving that piece of our infrastructure because we have to. John,
just a little clarification: when does the EPA say that this plant has to be in operation? And also, just a little more clarification: if Clay County has agreed to accept this sludge at this point.
Date for substantial completion is August 27th. The substantial completion date is August 27th, 2021.
I guess just when does EPA say that the plant has to be at the latest date completed?
Actually, we don't have a mandate from EPA. The mandate is essentially storage capacity of our existing ponds. So we're looking at building that pond next year to basically buy us enough time to construct the facility so that we don't exceed the capacity of the ponds.
what's the long term?
On the second, sorry.
Go ahead, Chris.
I apologize. On the second piece of your question with respect to Clay County, conversations are still ongoing. If we do decide to bring the sludge, or if we come to an agreement with Clay County, it would be a significant portion of their waste stream. So it's got some operational impacts to their landfill facility. So we're still working out options. We're talking to independent contractors who would be interested. There's been some interest in hauling the sludge and possibly doing some agricultural liming. So we're talking to a variety of folks, really trying to find the best fit for MPS.
What's the long-term prospect for the ponds? Are they going to be out there in 50 years and our grandkids are managing those ponds, or what happens with those facilities? They sit there?
It's a really good question. Right now they would presumably sit there. One of the things that we've incorporated into the design of this facility is the ability to actually pump sludge out of those ponds and bring it into the sludge dewatering facility, so we could dispose of that sludge at a future time. I think the most likely outcome of those ponds would simply be that they just become, we probably just cap them with clay and soil and
plant them over,
and then continue monitoring the groundwater in the area. But likely any significant excavation or dewatering of that sludge the cost would be substantial, very substantial.
Yeah. Interesting topic. I kid Ralph about this all the time, but it is an interesting topic, and you can really get into it, play with it and stuff. So yeah.
We could bury him out there.
I'm not going there.
Will you entertain a motion?
I really would. I think we've really done our damage.
I move to approve the specifications and authorize advertisement for bids for the lime sludge dewatering facility.
I have a motion and a second. Shall we discuss this further? I'll call the vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion is approved. Thank you, staff.
Thank you.
Oh, golly, got to get to the script. At this time, the meeting will be closed for executive session as authorized by Minnesota statutes, section 13D.05, subdivision 3C3, to discuss possible property transaction involving parcel number 21.029.4201 in Moorhead. Do we expect to take action upon conclusion? No? No, okay. So then, therefore, we will adjourn upon completion of the executive session. So as far as our telecast, we're done. And we are closed. We